What?
And we should be live on Instagram here in 1 second. Takes a little second to connect. There we go. What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us today. We are live with Francisco J Hernandez, who stopped by to come and chat with us today about himself and about his upcoming class at the Bokeh Photo Summit, August the 12th through the 14th. So, I'm just going to allow a little bit of time. I know we have some people in here already, but I'll allow a little bit of time for more people to come in. But in the meantime, how's it going, bro?
I'm doing good. I guess to kind of fill in this time right now, I can talk about the boring stuff, the gear that I use, because I think that's something that a lot of people always ask about. And I kind of anticipate it going to be happening again throughout the conversation. Like, what are you using now? Because
Right.
it was a while ago that I made a video where I said I was going to stop using Sony. And everybody remembers that video. And they don't ever remember the video where I followed up saying, you know what? I am going to stick with it because it's too expensive to kind of switch systems and
Uh,
nobody remembers that. So I'm still using my Sony stuff. I'm still using my Sony A7R III that I got in I think 2017. I think it was late
oh,
2017. Yeah, that's what I'm using right now, and I'm not gonna use anything else until it breaks. That's just how I am personally.
said until it breaks. Yeah, man. I mean, ultimately, I guess it's good to see that you're not like a big gearhead, right? Because you have those people that are like, every single time a camera drops or a lens drops, I have to go out and go buy it. And I'm like, why?
Yeah,
You know?
that's actually a big reason why my channel isn't so like if I were to be that type of guy, I think my channel would probably be like quadruple the size. But it's just I don't know how those people do it because I'm very much or maybe I'm just the wrong guy to do those types of videos because I am very much a routine kind of guy. Like I like a routine. Like I wake
Right.
up, I do this, do that. And when it comes to my gear, I'm like, I know this gear. I'm gonna stick with this gear. And unless it's like something that's not too complicated, like another lens, that's just adding a lens. But I
Right.
like the old Sony camera system. I'm not a fan of the new one, and then I think that's kind of like a very unpopular opinion. A lot of people like the new one, but
Oh, your Sony people are gonna come for your head today, man. Because you don't like the new one. But while we're waiting, everybody that's in here currently, just chime in and let us know where you're from. I see
oh,
some of your faces. We have Ben,
hey,
who is
Austin,
yeah,
Austin, Diego. I see some of these names. So that's cool that you guys are tuning in. I know Austin is actually gonna teach soon too, so that's cool that he's actually trying to do some opportunities like that too. Because I think more people who are knowledgeable in photography helping others, I think that's always a good thing.
yeah. If I'm not mistaken,
Oh, Craig.
Austin won a
Hey,
free
John. Oh,
to the Bokeh Summit on
oh,
Laura's what you call it. If I'm not mistaken, if correct me if I'm wrong, Austin. Then we have Ben, who's also an instructor at the Bokeh Summit. So we thank you for coming in and supporting too as well.
yeah. I'm
Tim,
seeing everybody's shouting out their locations. Yeah, represent where you're from.
right. Cleve.
Jersey.
Cleve is in Africa. Wow.
Wait, what? Oh,
Yep. Clayton, he's in South Africa.
Zambia. Zambia. That's a cool name.
Yeah, that's what's up. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And as we start to go throughout the process, guys, if you haven't been on the webinars before, know that we want you guys to engage. And we are doing a free giveaway to a seat for the Bokeh Photo Summit. And
Yes.
that's how we choose those names of, people that go into the little spinny wheel to make that selection. So be sure that you're chiming in with your questions. Be sure that you're engaging, right, to make the conversation interesting. And yeah, good luck to everyone,
To
and
everybody.
hopefully we'll get to see you, uh, in Atlanta in August. As a matter of fact, chime in and tell me if there's anybody in here. I know I already know there's some people, but who
Yeah,
else is
Alex, I
in the
think.
chat that's gonna be coming to the Bokeh Summit? So chime in the comments and let us know that.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, again, Francisco, thanks for stopping by and joining us today.
Yeah.
Now, myself, like many
Ooh, Heidelberg.
others, found out about you from YouTube. I ran across your
Oh,
videos on YouTube. Actually, my dad ran across your videos on
what?
YouTube when I first started once I first started
That's
getting
great.
into photography. You, Manny, Keydrin, like these are all people that he was watching on YouTube. And he told me about you guys. So that's how I was able to, come across you all. And I've met all of you all. I think the only person I haven't met from the people that he told me about was Brandon, who I think he's in Virginia, right? But um
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about your journey as a photographer, when how you got started, when you got started, and then we'll go from there into more questions.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I think for some reason I always had this interest in like documenting, and I think even when I was like 10 years old and stuff, I was very much introverted, and like my other family members were just kind of like the ones that would go out to friends' houses and stuff. I was playing video games in my room, but then I think my mom owned a store, and sometimes she would go to CVS for different things. I don't know, stamps or whatever, and I was always interested in just like the little cameras, disposables,
Hmm.
and I always really liked that documenting part, like documenting family. You can't do that, you couldn't do that back then with phones so easily available. Now you can like literally just grab somebody's like iPad or something and just take pictures. But back then, and I feel like I'm aging myself, and I don't feel old, but you couldn't do that. So I was interested in documenting, and then that was like around 10 to 12.
Uh-huh.
And then eventually in high school it was yearbook, and then eventually, when I started to figure out what I wanted to do in college, that was going to be the TV film track. And I needed a video camera. And that's when I started to get really more interested in the photography aspect. But it was, I think, the main thing that for me that really kind of kickstarted a journey for me
Hmm.
was seeing a magazine. I think it was Dior. I think it was a Dior campaign on the very back of a magazine.
Hmm.
Somebody must have grabbed it, read it, and then put it back, but backwards. So on the very
Hmm.
back of that magazine was a Dior campaign with Charlize Theron, I think her name is pronounced.
Yeah.
And I was like, this looks awesome. Like this looks so cool. Like it was very poppy, soft lighting, but punchy and colorful. And I was like, I want to learn how to do this. That looks so cool. And that's when I started to invest in lighting, and really trial and error for years. And I want to say that sometimes college can kind of get in the way of that focus. For me, I wanted to learn just that thing, lighting, when it comes to photography. And I felt like college kind of put a backseat on that. So I was still going to classes, learning lighting, but trial and error for years until I graduated. And finally in 2014, I could finally sit down and be like, I'm gonna learn this. No more error, too much errors. I need to learn. So that's what that was like the basic summary of my journey. But
Hmm.
honestly, when it comes to anybody's story, there's like always this, very deep details that require a lot more time. But that's that's the quick summary of my journey when it comes to photography.
Yeah, man. I mean, I it's funny because I get to talk to everybody, and mostly everybody's stories are like, "Oh, as a kid and blah blah blah." Like, I got into photography in my 30s. Like, you know what I'm saying? I literally had no desire to be a photographer. I had friends that were photographers, and a buddy of mine, Alan, who lived in LA. This dude was insane, like lighting master. And I used to always tell him, I'm like, you're like the best photographer that nobody knows about, man. And yeah, I would see him work or whatever, and I used to tell him like, I have no desire to be a photographer. Fast forward like 7, 8 years later, all of a sudden, I'm a photographer. I'm like, how did this happen? You know, but it's pretty cool. So from there, like we know you from YouTube, but most of us, like myself and the other instructors, right? We have photography businesses, right? Where we're
Mm.
actually out there every single day booking clients, like doing that type of thing. Like, is that something that you are doing? Is that something that you've ever done, or did you just kind of just dive into the YouTube side?
So in 2011, I actually started out when my mom helped me out because she's always handled all the finances and stuff. She was very encouraging, and she was like, you know what, I'm gonna go down to whatever, and I'm gonna get you a business license so you can start taking on clients and stuff. So she did that for me. I have somewhere, I think maybe on my Facebook. My Facebook is very much like a open diary where that's not too personal. Like it's like a whole, it's documenting my whole freaking journey when it comes to photography. But I remember posting, I got my business license and then taking on clients. But I did take on studio client work, I think 2011 when I got that. But I know there's people out there thinking, and like, didn't you say you're a trial and error? And what was the quality of the photos? I made sure that the quality of the photos were were at least decent to good. Like, I wasn't charging an arm and a leg. I was trying to make sure that everybody knew the expectations. And so like the photos weren't bad or anything, but I just wanted a different look. But I was taking clients since then, but it was very sporadic throughout the years. I think when I finally was taking, like when I graduated college, I think it was summer 2014. That's when I decided to focus a bit for a couple months. I made it my mission to know a lot of photographers in my area because I felt like maybe I could learn from them and others, just learn, just really soak in before I take on more clients. And unfortunately, I sent maybe I don't know, 50 plus emails to photographers all over my area, and none replied. So then I was like, you know what, maybe I'll, meet with them directly. And I think I met with maybe 8 photographers in my area. Good experience, bad experience, bad experience, bad experience. I think there's 1 out of the 8 was good experience. But basically I was doing little client work because I wanted to make sure that my knowledge met a standard for myself. I had personal standards that I wanted to really adhere to. So I didn't really take as many clients as I could have. And I think it wasn't until 2016, maybe mid 2015, is when I started to do more client work. And I did do quinces. I did do, for a split second, I did video work because I was like, you know what, let me see if, I'm doing YouTube videos, I could just, apply it to that. But then I found quickly that I don't care for video. I like the photos. So I have been taking on clients sporadically throughout the years, but I would say in the beginning, it was just here and there. And then 2016 is when I started to do more work. And I did do weddings and quinces and portrait shoots, but I did primarily portrait shoots because I felt like that was for me in this Texas sun, outdoors, quick hour sessions and come on, let's do those. And when it came to weddings and stuff, I don't ever want to do an outdoor wedding. So you have to pay me a bajillion dollars for that because it's so hot here in Texas. Unless it's a fresh, cool day, I'm not going to do it. But I have done a lot of client work, but in the past, I think since COVID, really, I think maybe slightly before COVID, I started to take way less and stop completely because I'm very much a family guy and I wanted to spend more time with family. And unfortunately, my family is very out of nowhere, they'll say, hey, let's go do this, let's go do that. And then sometimes I'd be like, oh, I'm going to do a shoot. I'm doing a wedding. So then I just kind of figured out, okay, what do I give more attention to so that I can make more money here and less in these, committed time slots when it comes to client sessions and stuff. So I stopped doing client work completely. And I focused on, making money through my Instagram and my YouTube and affiliate links with different companies and sponsorships. And I know there's people out there who don't like, those ad reads when it comes to YouTube videos. But if I could do an ad read for 30 seconds to 60 seconds and spend time with my family, I'm going to do it. So, hit skip, hit the right arrow 6 times on YouTube and then you're good. You can, the video will continue. So that's all I just, recommend doing that, guys. If you guys want to watch my videos, hit that skip. And then when I start to talk about the subject, then, you can continue.
It's so funny because I saw that on TikTok. As a matter of fact, somebody was like, if you get ads on YouTube, just hit that right arrow 6 times and it'll go past. And I was like, you're hacking these things, man. So they don't have to watch the ads. But it's what it is. But it's great to be able to, provide for yourself in a content creation type scenario, right? To be able to provide for yourself, your family, right? And then have that freedom to be able to be spontaneous and do whatever it is that you want to do, with your family. So even like Miguel, we have Miguel on, who's coming to the Bokeh Summit talking about content creation and, being able to, build a revenue from content creation and YouTube specifically, right?
Yeah,
And I think it's an awesome thing, man. I really don't think people know the amount of work that has to like go into that.
it
You
is.
know, it's a lot of work, man.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
lot of
crazy
work.
with Miguel. There is a small connection to me and my college days because his. I don't know if he's still working with him, but I think the last events there were some events that he worked with Miguel before, but his videographer for a while, I don't know if it's still current,
Hmm.
was a guy that I went to school with. Like
Oh wow.
we both have degrees in TV film from my local university, that's here in Edinburgh, and so it's cool because seeing people that are in the same kind of field, even though like we're from the same town, and I just feel like whenever you go to conferences, you don't really see people from your area, and then I'm like, hey, that's him. Like, I know you. So it was kind of cool seeing that.
What's funny is most Atlanta photographers I only see at conferences. I never see them. I never see them here in Atlanta. We see each other at conferences, Vegas, St. Louis, wherever, but never here at home. But
Yeah.
it is
No,
what it is.
one crazy example of that is there's a photographer in my area from the next town over, like less than 15 minutes. I
Hmm.
still have not met her, and I think I've communicated with her since 2011, maybe 12. And there, I think it was 2014, 15 maybe,
Hmm.
where there was going to be some sort of event that was going to be in Hawaii or something like
Hmm.
that, and she was going to go to it, and I was on the verge of going to it, like 80% going to it, and unfortunately I didn't. But had I gone to that, that would have been the time that we actually met up, even though we live like less than 15 minutes away. So it's crazy how that works out. But I do my best to kind of meet photographers whenever I get that availability, the opportunity. Sometimes not so much local, but I think a lot of people have this mindset that like competition is gonna be like competition, like
Right,
cutthroat. I'm not like that at all. So I feel like there's always that kind of preconception or something like that. This
right,
preconceived notion that it's going to be like cutthroat. And for me, I'm like, hey, you want to learn how I do this? This is how I do it. Oh, in Lightroom, I do this. And this, I'm very open book. But I think not a lot of photographers are like that. And it's just kind of like what everybody thinks. So it's crazy. So I think that kind of non-approach to other photographers, or at least nobody really approaching me, is because of that. But the
right,
some photographers who have approached me over the past couple of years, we're friends. I think people are just nervous to reach out to me, seeing that I have like a certain amount of followers, and they're like, oh, he's not gonna read this message. I read all my messages. I read them, like it's not that big of a deal. I just, I try to go through all my messages. I hate seeing that number, the notification on
right.
my phone. So that's probably a big reason why I actually check all my messages. I hate seeing that little red dot with the number on it. So,
Right. Well, that's actually a good segue. So Michael Miller, he wants to get started with the questions. He's asking, what are you bringing to Boca, and what can the attendees expect to learn?
okay, so that's a good question. The main reason why I wanted to kind of do that class and kind of share the knowledge in terms of that aspect is because I think for a lot of people that kind of quickness, like the results, that quick result kind of method, a lot of people always have limitations in terms of gear or cameras, lenses, and stuff. So I have my Sony 7R3. I primarily use that because I just like everything about it, megapixels and all that. But I'm going to be using some primes. Everybody doesn't need to use primes, but since it is a lighting class, I was going to use some very quick setups that I have. And I think if anybody who's following my channel might know about this gear already, but there are some softboxes that open up so quick, like literally within a second. And those are going to be the softboxes that I will be using at that class. And you know what? I don't want to gatekeep anything, but when you go to that class, or after that class, then I'll be more sharing, knowledgeable. But it's crazy when it comes to photography, and I get a lot of heat for this. But there's certain gear that are exactly the same. They're exactly the same gear, but one brand is like $400, and the other brand's $130, $150. And I'm very much in the camp where I try to tell people, oh, that $400 one, you don't need to get that. You can get the $150 one. It's the exact same thing. And so I think I always get a little backlash from different brands because of that. I get a little stink eye at certain conferences because I'm very open when it comes to that, because I strongly believe that, the results matter. So if I'm going to go for a certain softbox and it does the same thing as the other one that's more expensive, I'm going to be very open to telling people about the cheaper option. So in this case, it is going to be SMDV. It's a softbox company, but I might work with them a little bit more in terms of like, actually, I might do a giveaway at the class. So I'm talking to 2 companies right now to potentially give out a free light and a free softbox. So that's another kind of incentive to go to that class. But those softboxes open up so quickly, and the Godox/Flashpoint lights that I'm going to be using at the class, they're perfect for those softboxes, and they open up in seconds. They have lots of power, and they can get you really great results really quickly. And that's what I'm going to be using at the class. And you will see that, and you see how quick you can get the results at the class. And maybe a good time after the class, then I'll be more knowledgeable or more sharing the knowledge in terms of my YouTube videos and other stuff.
Right. So Craig is asking, what is your dream shoot location?
See, that's a crazy question, because I think I always try to keep my mind like thinking of the opposite. Like I always try to do great results, great photos in crappy locations, to be blunt. So I think, I think now that I think about it, whenever I've seen like shoots in Iceland or something like that, it looks so awesome. Like, I think it's like the beach has like black sand or black pebbles or something.
Yeah, black
And
sand beach.
yeah, and it looks so freaking beautiful, and it's always like cloudy, doesn't look dull. It looks so, I don't know how to say, otherworldly. So I think maybe Iceland would be the one that I would want to go to, and it would have to be definitely. And I know this might be like seem boring to people, but like a nice flowy dress, like just, I don't know, just make use of that wind, because I know there's like, I think it's windy there, but I think Iceland with a nice big flowy dress that's like the Cinderella color, maybe a little bit darker than that Cinderella dress color. But
Yeah, Iceland was pretty cool. I went in 2022. I went out. I was supposed to go in 20, but we know what happened there, right? So I was supposed to go in 20 for an engagement session, and that got canceled. So I took the opportunity to go with a group of photographers in 2022, and yeah, I mean, it looks like you're on Mars on some places. Like I
yeah,
can't even, but it is a pretty cool location to go and shoot. So you should try it. Leah is asking, how large would the class be? And will you be shooting using your cameras? Yes, you all will be. It's a hands-on class. So it's a photo walk. So not only will he be instructing, but you'll have the opportunity to be able to take photos, ask questions, use the gear that he's actually talking to you about. In terms of class size, we are limiting the class sizes. We are expecting over 300 people at the conference. So we need to be able to divide everybody up into more palatable groups, right? So nobody likes a class of 100 people and 50 people. Even 50 people in a class can be quite the headache. So yeah, good question, Leah.
yeah. But one thing I do want to say about the classes that I do, I
Mhm.
always make it my focus that every single person that attends walks away with an image that I am jealous of. So that's one thing that's the double-edged sword of when it comes to teaching. Like, I see beautiful images, I'm like, I just want to steal your SD card. That's like, if I'm saying that to you at the shoot, that image is really legit. And that's the thing that I really aim for. I want you to make sure that you not only take a great photo, but understand how you got to that point. So that's what I always do in my classes.
Yeah, that's important. Kia is asking, are there any other aspects of photography that you would like to teach about eventually?
Yes, and the biggest one I think in my mind is going to be posing. I think posing. I think that's if it's not lighting, I think that is probably the second biggest thing that I always get asked about, like when it comes to posing. And the reason why I would want to get better about posing so I can teach it to people is because I feel like I'm very limited when it comes to my posing as well. Like I have my go-to poses, and I think even just having a go-to poses is something to share on its own. But I
Mhm.
think that, knowing exactly how each person, each different skin tone of a person, can work with different poses and different lighting and how to apply the lighting to those different poses. I think that's something that I just want to get more knowledgeable about before I start to like teach it. But I definitely want to teach more about posing because, again, that's the second biggest thing that I get asked about. And for me, I always tell people this kind of, and it's not the go-to answer I give everyone, but it's my go-to answer because I tell people, if you just Google or go to Pinterest, and you can get pose inspiration there, and you don't necessarily have to steal the pose. I would definitely not say to recreate the pose exactly because again, it's not going to be applicable to everybody,
Right.
but you can use it as inspiration and then modify it. So that's what I always do. I get a pose, inspiration, and then I modify it to that person and that pose and that lighting and that composition. So all the different elements change because that, unless you have using the exact same gear, same location, same model of that pose inspo photo, it's not going to be completely applicable to your own photo. So that's why I would say just get inspiration and modify it. But posing is definitely a big one for me.
Got it. Got it. Let's see. Let me go back. Jay Banks said, if you had only one focal length to choose from for the rest of your career, what would it be and why? Good question.
For me, I think it would be 35 millimeter focal length because back when I was really focused on like the making bokeh in my photos, I was like addicted to my Canon 135L f2 lens, and I know from using that for years, for literal years, using that lens at my portrait shoots, that there's that distance when it comes to working with the subject. There's that distance that just kind of, I want to say, it kind of hinders that connection that you can have with the subject. And that
Mhm.
connection is really important to me because you get better expressions, you have a lighter environment. And I think that distance kind of hindered that. So when I started to kind of experiment with 35 millimeters, I was like, oh, you know what? I can really kind of blur this background if I want to. But if I want to grab it, I can also do that as well. I have that leeway. With the 135, I'd have to go like a mile away to get like an environmental shot, or like take some shots and stitch them together, which I have done like maybe 5 times over the past couple of years,
Grand
because like
Hazard.
there was, yeah, I was limited in my space. There was like a fountain behind me. I didn't want to get in the fountain, so I had to stitch photos. But but yeah,
Get
I
in the
think.
fountain, bro. Get in the fountain, like all in.
Well, there's another time that there was an actual wall, and I can't do that. I can't get into the wall. But yeah, 35 millimeter.
Yeah, 35 millimeter, which is crazy because everybody that knows me knows I'm a huge fan of zooms. I don't do primes. Like when you want that little bit more of focal length, you want to get a little bit closer, you can't really do that. You got to switch lenses. And as a wedding photographer, it's a pain in the butt.
Oh
Now, are there wedding photographers that are just primes, 35, 50, 85, 100%? But more power to you guys. And
yeah,
because I'm not carrying multiple cameras on me in a day. You know what I'm saying? Being weighed down, and you know, it's not my jam. But let
yeah.
me see.
For events, yeah, a Zoom is what I'm using too. Yeah, like I love
Let
primes, but if I had to choose, yeah, if that question is very tricky because then if it's portrait shoots, then I have the 35. If it's an event, unless I'm using like a 120 megapixel camera where I can crop in,
Mhm.
then yeah, I might want to use a Zoom instead.
So even I had a shoot earlier today. I was shooting some content for a menswear company, who's actually doing all of the menswear stuff for the Bokeh Summit. So all of the
Oh,
the
nice.
custom tuxedos and suits and stuff that the guys will be wearing, this guy he's actually providing. And I was in there. I was using all Sigma glass. Sigma sent me a bunch of lenses recently, and I've been kind of like playing around with them. And I took them on a few like weddings. They're a little heavier than my RF glass, so I was being very limited with those things or whatever. But I did have an opportunity to like play around with some of that glass, so I can't wait to be able to create some content and share with you guys what my thoughts are on the Sigma glass. So that's coming up soon.
Well, you
Uh,
got bigger arms than me, so like I think you're good when it comes to the glass.
oh man, let's see. Alan says he would like to see a step by step of off camera flash with one light. Well, come to the
Definitely.
Bokeh Summit, Alan. Come to the Bokeh Summit. You can get all the live demos and stuff that you want. And if I'm sure you guys have seen it on the screen by now, but if you use code Francisco, then you'll receive $100 off of either the VIP or the basic ticket to the show. Alexis is asking, will I need to bring a trigger for the class?
So I will do my best to bring triggers for every system because that's something I actually have the availability to now with companies with Godox and Flashpoint. Getting one for Panasonic and Lumix and all these other ones that aren't just the main three that Nikon, Sony, and Canon. But
Mhm.
I will do my best to bring those transmitters so you won't need to bring anything other than your camera, lens, and SD card. But I would still recommend you at least try to bring one so that everybody doesn't have to pass them around. But I will do my best to bring transmitters for every system. So even if you don't bring one, you'll still be able to take photos.
Got it. Vincent says, "Go Sigma, lose those Canon." Never, bro, never. When I now, granted, and I'll get into this as I create the video about it, but I'm comparing RF glass to technically Sigma EF glass. It's not apples to apples, right? But they are definitely a lot heavier than my RF glass. So we'll start with that.
That
But
28 to 70 though, that 28 to 70 though is a beast.
yeah, that's my main lens that I use, and that is heavy. That's definitely heavy. I'm used to it now, but when I first got it, I had a day where I was doing 2 boudoir sessions, and like I'm in there shooting these shots, and after a while I had to put my arms out. I'm like, damn, like I'm really putting some pressure on these front delts. Like you
Like
really wouldn't think so,
yeah.
right? But it is kind of a beast. Let me see. Jay Banks is asking, what are we shooting in your class? So tell us a little bit about that.
So I do primarily work with women, but I did want to have for that class the opportunity to work with a man and a woman for that
Mhm,
class. But I still don't have the details because I'm talking to a couple of models in that area. But
mhm,
I'll keep you guys updated for sure because I like to be very transparent with how the shoot will be. And I know that there's people out there who, like, for example, like I know women tend to work better with women and
mhm.
they're more familiar with them and they're more comfortable. So that's one of the reasons why I tend to work with women. But I think it's gonna be for just a simple portrait shoot with a nice dress. It won't be anything too extravagant. Like I'm not gonna do like a bridal shoot um, or like a super high end, extravagant fashion. Like there's some people that do like shoots where they're like futuristic with like super cool shiny glasses and like a silver like outfit. I'm not gonna do that. It's gonna be kind of casual, a little bit higher end than casual. But
Got it.
yeah, it's not anything too crazy. But I think the casual stuff is the best because it's very applicable to your own photo shoots where you live. Unless you're doing like nothing but billionaires, then the casual stuff is going to be casual wear is going to be good.
Right. Alexis came back with another question. She was saying, as a follow up, if we don't own a trigger, what's a good recommendation for a starter one? She's using Fujifilm. What
Well, right
lighting
now,
system do you have?
the what?
Alexa, I was asking Alexis what lighting system does she have?
True, true, true. Because that doesn't matter because there's lots of different lighting systems out there. I tend to use the Flashpoint slash Kodak stuff. So I think I actually have the transmitter box, not the actual transmitter box or transmitter, but I have the box right here. Flashpoint came out with this one here, which is kind of small. It's like it looks like an Apple Watch kind of size, but it's a little bit thicker. And that one I really, really do like because it's very small, but they have an updated kind of a hot shoe where it's metal, and they're typically not metal, so it's very strong, has lots of battery life, and also one other good thing about that transmitter is that you can see it in full sunlight. Unfortunately, for the older transmitters with that system, like you could still see the power levels and everything on the screen, but if it was bright outside, then you could kind of not be able to make out all the power settings. But so I would kind of use my hand to kind of give a little shadow to the screens. But that one right there is what I'm going to be using, and I will do my best again to bring one for each system. So good thing that
Yeah,
they're small.
so I
Yeah,
do have one here. I still have my old Godox lights because I use these for second shooters or photographers that I'm training. My a buddy of mine that I work with, he uses the Godox system as well. So I always keep this stuff on hand in case I need it. But as you guys know, I am a Westcott shooter and Westcott ambassador. Which with Westcott, you don't need to have a million triggers. You know? You don't need to have a million. You only need to have two. So these are the ones that I have when I'm teaching. I
it's
have
true though.
the
It's true what he's saying.
the multi one, which goes for every camera except for my headache Sony people that need their own special trigger because they're special. So, um,
So
yeah.
he just
So
needs to bring those two, and you're good.
that's it. That's it for my class. Let me see something. I stepped away. She was saying that she's currently using continuous lights, which is nan lights. Yeah, I use nan light. All of the lights that you see here on me are nan light. So 150, 4 Pavo tubes, 500. I have some of the larger Pavo tubes as well. If you've been following my work on Instagram, I more recently did a whole tutorial with PPA where I did like a full image breakdown using Pavo tube. So yeah, if you're not using a particular flash system, you would need to figure out what flash system yet you're using in order to be able to determine what trigger you would want.
Yeah,
Let me see something. Chime in. Where are my Sony shooters, my Canon shooters, my Nikon shooters?
yeah.
What is everybody shooting? Tell us that.
Yeah, that's a good question because like I'm always wondering how many people are going to show up to my classes with what gear. And I think when I did a class last year or this year, either one or the other, but it was crazy because there was a lot of Nikon. I think a couple Canon, and then I was like two Sony, and I didn't anticipate that at all. I don't know. I just felt like people who wanted to sign up for my stuff would use Sony. So I was surprised by the amount of Nikon that was in my classes. And I was like, whoa, what's going on?
1 second, I'm replying to a comment here.
Fuji Lone Wolf.
Well, actually, I'll just so Leah, not just registering for the webinar, but actually engaging, asking questions. As people are asking questions, for Francisco to answer, I'm adding you all to a list, and we do the drawing at the end of the webinar.
Yeah, don't be scared. I'm very open. Just type a question that you might have in your mind. Even if I, maybe covered it, maybe your question could be a little bit different. And I'll cover something that I previously didn't cover. So, but yeah, engage.
So Alex is saying, I'm not a flash photographer. Would this course be for intermediate people, or do I need to watch some YouTube videos first to understand?
So that again, I can only speak for my own classes, but I always do my best to break down every kind of aspect of how I take the photos. So more than likely, what I'll do is I'll show you how the ambient shot would look like, the available light shot would look like, and then how I adjust my settings to get to a point where I would rather have the settings so that I can use flash and get different results. But I'm very, step by step. You shouldn't need to take any sort of classes or watch any YouTube videos, to learn exactly what I'm going to be doing in my classes. But I would say as long as you know your camera settings, which I'm pretty sure you mentioned, you said intermediate. As long as you know your camera settings, and you should be good. So yeah, you don't need to do any like a lot of research to attend one of my classes.
Right. As long as you're not like, how do you turn the camera on? What's f-stop? You should be fine.
Please learn like how to focus too, because I remember a long time ago somebody was like, I don't know how to focus. And I was like, why did you why did you come to this class?
Right.
We're talking about lighting, and you were like, I don't know how to focus.
Right. Let's see. John is saying, in shooting someone's photo, portrait specifically, what's the main element you try to achieve?
So that's also a good question, because I think I think not a lot of people realize this, or at least it's very important to me, but I'm not sure about other people. But a great expression on the subject is something I always strive for. Like I always strive for that great expression. When it comes to photos I've taken over the years, there's been a great pose, great lighting, great composition, great so many other things, and then the pose is just not there. It's just not there, or the expression's not there, and it kills me. So I'm like, I think I would rather sacrifice some other elements for a better expression. Like I would rather have I'll just say shittier, but crappier pose. I'd rather have worse lighting, because there's post stuff that you can do to maybe fix stuff. But I would rather have other things be worse and have a amazing expression. Obviously, ideally, you'd want everything to be good, but that expression is something that's really important to me, because I'm very picky. I'm like, one eye doesn't look like it's smiling like the other eye. That smile could be a little bit bigger, especially because at the photo shoot sometimes, not everybody, but some subjects that I've shot with, they'll have a great smile, like a great natural smile, and then the camera goes up, and then they're like, no, I don't want to show it. They'll do like a half one, and I'm like, oh, come on, just give me that full smile. Not to trick them.
So this is a good segue. Ben is asking, how do you coach them for a great expression?
So when it comes to that, it's so tricky, but different depending on the subject, depending on how cool they are with you. Like some people are just very friendly, and they'll do that smile, or you tell them a funny joke. But I think when it comes to myself personally, having that ability to kind of be a people person, which I've never always been. I grew up introverted, but through my portrait photo shoots over the years, you kind of develop a understanding of how people act and how they might, be more comfortable talking about certain subjects. So I do a lot of icebreakers, and I feel like, I get a good understanding of things that they may be more interested. If they sometimes I'll play music, and even the music alone is a good indicator of how, they might be open to different subjects. Like, oh, this person likes sports, and I talk about, oh, did you see the Super Bowl or whatever, or did you go for this sport and stuff, and then being able to kind of talk casually to them gives them way more relaxed. And then so I just make a certain joke about that subject, or even sometimes my wife will step in. She tends like lots of my different photo shoots I do, and sometimes she'll make a joke too. And if it's like a couple shoot, then I tell like the spouse, the one that's more comfortable, hey, do this, do that, so that they can laugh or something. And that usually helps. But I think kind of getting a good understanding of that person that you're working with, and trying to be very open with communicating and connecting with that person is super crucial. My very first photo shoot that I worked with somebody, very awkward, very awkward. I was like, I was unsure about my settings, and I was like, talking to myself. But I'm very much not like that anymore. I'll talk while I'm doing settings. And sometimes, I'll be like, oh, do this pose. Let's see if that works. And then I'll take, depending on how cool the person is, then I'm like, that didn't work at all. And then they'll laugh like at, when I do that, and then I try to do a shot right away. But there's so many different things to do. But I think just connecting with that subject is super important to getting better expressions. Just that connection. Yeah.
Let's see. Derek is asking another lighting preference question. How did you settle on your preferred lighting system?
That's a good question. For me, I think I mentioned how I'm picky sometimes. It, from my kind of my beginning, kind of my roots when it comes to lighting, I had softboxes because I was very, I wasn't the wealthiest. I had, to get like $50 softboxes that were, a very much of a pain to set up, and they were big and they were bulky and they were like not the best material. So over time, I was like, you know what? I'm never going to do that because of how complicated it was. And then I thought, you know what? I need, I don't need the biggest ones. I was using 5 foot for a long time, and that's not very ideal. So when I came to like, all those different years of different things, I came to certain sizes of softboxes and different ones that set up quickly and different material strengths of those softboxes. Like it came to just, honestly, it came from experience. It came from like me very much having annoyance with certain type of softboxes to kind of get to the point where I'm like, you know what? I know the price of this one. I know it's a little bit more than I care to pay for, but I know it's gonna be better than all this headache that I'm going through with this other one. So I think the fact that the ease of setup and the size being enough, not necessarily like you don't need a 5 foot every time. You don't. So I have certain sizes where I'm just like, this is going to be a good job for this. For this one person, I just need this size. So it just comes down to ease of use and trying to be very quick with it too, because I don't want to take a long time setting up a softbox and then them just waiting and then having to talk and then sweating while it yeah. It's over the years. I've tried so many things, guys. It's crazy.
I think the question was more so about maybe the actual lighting versus the soft boxes.
Oh, okay. So, so my bad. But I think Rembrandt lighting, like the styles like that. I think.
No, the Flashpoint, Godox, that type of thing.
Oh, the lighting systems. Oh,
Yeah.
so I think for me it was very much affordability. When I was shooting back in the day, I think the very first light that I invested in was the Canon 430 EX2, which I still have because it was expensive. I bought it at Walmart, and it was like I want to say 250, 240, and it was on sale for like $40 off. But I thought, I was very much in that mindset where like, okay, it's expensive, so it has to be good. And then afterwards, then I found out about speed lights that cost $50, $60 and do the same thing. Well, some features not exactly, but
Right.
basically the same thing. So then I think for me it became like, okay, there's this one investment, it needs to be expensive and it's going to work great. And then when I became more knowledgeable, I was like, you know what, it doesn't need to be expensive if it does these things that I care for and doesn't have this other feature that I don't care for. So for me, it just mainly was affordability, because I strongly believe that everybody should be able to kind of experience and have fun with off-camera flash, because I honestly think the results are always great. Even right out of camera, like no editing, no nothing. So I think me wanting everybody to kind of enjoy that as well makes me go and recommend more affordable systems. So Westcott is pretty affordable as well. So
Westcott is really affordable. And before we get into Craig's question, let me chime in on that. So, when I first started, in terms of just weddings, right? I just found out about like the Young Nuo stuff, and I purchased that stuff. I used it for years because it worked in conjunction with the Canon
oh yeah,
RT RXT or whatever it's called system.
yes,
And I was using that, and then from there, um, it worked really well for a very long time until it didn't. Right. Then I went to the Canon 600s. And then 2019, I went over to the Godox stuff, and that was great because now you have these lights that are twice as powerful, right? You're not in these situations where you have to go into high speed sync as much, and that type of thing. But the thing that was the kicker for me with leaving Godox and going specifically to um, Westcott was I was in Miami. I was shooting. I had an assistant with me. I typically take an assistant most places that I go, or sometimes I'll just get somebody that's there local. But I flew an assistant in with me. Your job is just to hold the light. Just hold the light. Well, I'm shooting, and out the corner of my eye, I see the light coming down. Light hits the ground, break, and in order to get it repaired, you have to buy a new light. So when I ran across Westcott, started learning more about the company or whatever, and the ability to be able to just send the light in and have it repaired and not have to come out of pocket, for me, that was it. I mean, customer service is it, So yeah, it's not as cheap as a young Nuo was back in the day.
Yeah.
You get the young Nuo lights for like $100, $120 or something like that for the speed light. But if they break, you got to buy a new one type thing. So that was very instrumental in me leaving Godox, which is insanely popular, going specifically to Westcott.
I remember I called customer service one time for Westcott, and it was like I was talking to somebody right away, and I was like, "That's crazy," because like
Right.
I don't think that's very common at all. Like at least I was like shell shocked because I was like, "Oh hi," talking to somebody right away. And I was like, "Wow, that's crazy." Mind blown.
Yeah. Let's see.
Mm.
Diego.
I
Um,
mean, I want to answer Craig's question real quickly. I usually bring one light and use the sunlight for rim, but I think it's more. I always carry several, but I always primarily try to use two because I always feel like even a little bit of subtle rim light can go a long way. But if I'm lazy, one. If I'm not lazy, two. And if I'm really not lazy, three.
Got it. Well, so since we're there, like let's talk about that. Obviously, your main light is your one light is your key light, right? Tell us more about how you would use those additional lights.
So I think one thing that I really tried to get a better understanding over time was the lighting that I will be working in ahead of time. So, sometimes what I recommend people to do is to visit a location ahead of time to kind of get a feel for the lighting. But one thing that will kind of hinder that kind of practice is if the lighting is going to be different. If it's a very cloudy, bland day on the day that you're visiting the location, then the next day that you go to it and it says sunlight, very much nice sun everywhere, it's going to be different kind of results. So I always try to keep in mind ahead of time, well, if the sun is over here in this direction and it's going to land over here, and I hopefully this doesn't sound too over the head complicated, because I'm not that guy at all. I'm not complicated in any way, but I try to get him, and I'm trying to think, okay, if I'm going to shoot it here at 4 o'clock, that sun's going to be right there, and maybe that building's going to block the sunlight that might hit them. And I just try to get an understanding of lighting, like the light that I'm working in. And based off of that, then I'm like, okay, well, if I'm getting a free sunlight rim light, then I just need that one light to kind of just fill them in, and then I'll be good. But, let's say, for example, if it's a kind of like a golden hour shoot, sometimes my golden hour shoots are intentionally like that golden hour plus 30 minutes. And in that last tail end of the 30 minutes, I know that that sunlight, that rim light is going to be gone. Then I'll be like, you know what? Let me bust open an extra rim light and have my wife, hold that one. And then I can get that little subtle separation from the darker kind of environment that I'm now working in. Because at blue hour, because after golden hour is blue hour, you unless you have like a very bright lighting in the background, it might be typically a dark background, so you want something to kind of help pop that subject against that background. So that's when I bring in a second light.
Nice, nice. Always great to know how everybody does everything, because everybody's different, you know.
Very different.
Um,
I can always speak for myself.
right. Everybody's different, and there's just so much information out there. You basically just kind of need to figure out what's the best approach for you. Because even me, I was shooting today. I was shooting very lazy in studio. I was shooting very lazy in studio. I did studio portraits. And because I was using a white backdrop, I knew I needed to light that backdrop. Um, I just came back from basically being gone all month long from shooting weddings and corporate stuff. So I have my Westcott 200s in my bag. I use one of them to light the backdrop so that the backdrop itself would, be more pure white.
Yeah.
And I use my Nanlite 720 as the key. And that was it. I was like, man, like I'm tired. I don't feel like lugging all of this stuff in the studio. Like this is what we're gonna make work today. And that was it, man. So there's always more than one way to skin a cat, as they like to
Yeah.
say.
Just gauge
Let's
your
see.
energy level, and then that'll affect your gear.
Right. Right. Let's see. Where were we?
I think,
Diego.
yeah, Diego.
Um, what sort of things are you looking for when you're shooting on location?
One thing that I actually been paying more attention to is just colors, and colors that will complement the outfit of the subject. And that's actually kind of another important aspect that I was very lacking of when I was starting photography. Like I would take on a client or something, and then I would just trust that they were going to have a great outfit on, or an outfit that complemented the scene. And I remember one turning point. This is 2016, no, 2015, where I did a photo shoot. It was a practice shoot, thankfully, with somebody at a beautiful park that had nice, greenery. And she looked like she came to go to the club. And I was like, what is going on here? And it just threw me out. Like I was so confused. I was like, why is her hair done this way? Why is she wearing this? Why is she wearing heels? We're in a field. Like it was just very, from that point on. Also, the pattern of her outfit was like not. It was like camo, but also like a weird camo, like brown and pink. And I was just like, it's not working. So from then, it was a learning experience of like be more communicative with the subject about what they're going to wear, and especially with like the tones that you want to work with. For me, I love working with warmer tones, earthy tones. So those are like beiges, whites, or not necessarily white, but beige, maybe eggshell white, browns, greens, dark green, dark brown, dark blue. Like I like those rich colors that are dark. Like I don't know how to explain it, but that very much influences where I'm going to be working in. Or because like you might work in a beautiful location, like let's say for example, this convention center that everybody goes to down here where I live, like it's a whole, kind of vast space to work with. You have greenery over here, you have water over here, water's blue, green's green, there's brown walls. Those influence, the outfit is going to influence the specific spot that I'm working with. And I think another thing that very much influences my locations is going to be the leading lines that might have available to me, or symmetry. So like if there's like a nice, it's kind of like a standard shot that a lot of photographers take. But if there's a nice, walkway, and then, it's leading into the subject, just plant them in there right there. It'll be a nice safe shot, and you take advantage of that. So I think for me, it's gonna be always gonna be colors, leading lines, or lack of leading lines. Sometimes you don't want leading lines. Sometimes you just want like a nice backdrop. And I think another thing is probably like the lighting too. Like how is the lighting in there? One thing I want to quickly mention about the lighting is a while ago, like 2018, I think it was, maybe 2017, I was doing a photo walk in New York, and I thought, okay, golden hour is gonna have good golden hour light. And I did not anticipate how big the buildings are around me and how big the trees are around me. So there was golden light, but it was hiding behind the cloud, or the buildings and the trees. So I had none, available to me. So in hindsight, I would have scheduled it, an hour before, or sometime where the sun is higher, so that I can actually reach my subject because I didn't anticipate that, how big and what would be blocking the sunlight.
Got it. Let's see. Let's go to Katrina's question really quickly. She said, "What about people who never use light? Do you have to use light meters when you're shooting?"
That
Um,
that's a good
real
question.
quick, real quick for me. If you know me, you know I don't use a light meter.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I don't use a light meter. What about you? So no light meter for you either?
No light meter for me. I just feel like if you want to, like, if you have a bougie shoot, go for it. Go get a light meter. Throw it up there, look more professional. If that's something that's important to you, go for it. Get it out there. But I think the one or two shots that you need to kind of get that lighting nailed down, it's it's all you need. It's not that it doesn't take that long at all. Like if you get to that point where you're lighting, you just need that one, maybe two shots to get to the light where you exactly want it, and then you're good. You're golden. I have a light meter. It's actually over here on my shelf. I never use it. I never ever use it. I bought it with the intention to know how much power my lights were actually inputting with different modifiers. And there's power loss with high speed sync, and I wanted to test how much power you lose. But outside of that thing sits on my shelf. It's over there. It's wasting. It's just there. It's just over there in my shelf.
Cool. So Christina is asking, "Oh, do you use a light meter? Why or why not?" So we got that covered, but I do have you. I have you entered into the giveaway. Let's see. Carolina is asking, "How do you experiment or change up things when you get in the groove of a typical lighting setup?"
So that's also a good question, because I think for years I was kind of sticking to just Rembrandt lighting, like just a nice softbox, a little bit up, a little bit to the side. Not necessarily how I am right now, but I have mine kind of just like right here. But if it was a little bit more to the side, I liked that Rembrandt lighting for a long time. But then I started to think more about, like, sometimes some people really take in better different lighting styles. And I was like, you know what? I want to try these other lighting styles that I've seen before, but I just never used them because I just was in that mindset. Always Rembrandt, always Rembrandt. So then, I was getting very much dramatic setups. Like there's one that's, I think Joel Grimes uses a lot, which is just like right above the camera, and it's just up right there, and it's just like blasting you right like that. You get a little bit of like shadow underneath the nose and underneath the chin, but it's very direct. Yeah, butterfly lighting.
Yeah.
And I've tried that before, a couple photo shoots, and it's a crazy awesome look. It's very clean. I think with Rembrandt you have shadow, and I like shadow. I like the little pop that you get with shadows, but sometimes a cleaner look can go another direction that's probably better. So I think for me, it's just experimenting with different lighting in terms of the vibe that you're getting. If it's a very elegant shoot, maybe the shadows are gonna work against you. Maybe you want that whole, like for quinces, I will do a little bit kind of modified version of Rembrandt lighting, not necessarily Rembrandt lighting, but just a little bit more on camera. It's not necessarily butterfly lighting or Rembrandt, but it's a little bit between those two, because you don't want to have too much shadows on that dress that they're paying a lot of money for. You don't want it to be in complete darkness. You want it to be visible. So I'll go for a cleaner look when it comes to a wedding or a quince. And when it comes to my portrait shoots, I'll do both. But it's better to be on the safe side and get a cleaner, more spread of light, evenly spread of light on that subject when it's something that is very important to them, like a quince.
Right. And if for any of you who have questions about lighting and lighting patterns, shameless plug, I do have a free lighting guide on my YouTube. I mean, not my YouTube, on my you go to my Instagram and you go to the link tree there, you'll be able to see it there. It's a free download, but it gives you like a full breakdown of the lighting setup, what the final picture looks like, as well as what scenarios are best to use them in. So
yeah, for sure.
There you go with that. Let's see. Rowan is asking, how can line shapes and patterns be used to enhance composition? Another shameless plug really quickly. If you head over to my TikTok page, I've done a whole series. I'm in the middle of a series called 100 Days of Mastering Wedding Photography. and it breaks down compositional stuff like really well. So, go give me a follow on there and check that out. But I'll let Francisco get to that.
Yeah, for me, I think that one thing that really kind of attracts my eye is like the interesting colors. But I think when it comes to, like you said, shapes, lines, shapes, and patterns, it's honestly, for me, the one example that I can go to right away in my brain is, I think in New York it's called the Javits Center, but it was a nice, beautiful building, and I think it was towards golden hour, and like the building itself has a nice, beautiful pattern on it. It's just, it's just very shiny, and it's not anything crazy, but it was very reflective that day, and the nice sunlight was just beaming on it, and it was a nice
You lost your audio, bro. Yeah, I have no audio from you. Is anybody else experiencing the same thing?
I don't know why you muted me.
Yeah,
Sit on
now
there.
it sounds different. Like it's a lot more like
Maybe
room. Yeah, maybe
it's
your mic died. Did it die?
um now it's different. It's better.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Oh yeah. So I don't know why I did that, but technical
Tech,
difficulties.
right.
But
Tech is gonna break.
yeah, for me, I think line shapes and patterns. It's something that I don't think I really look into, because leading lines are definitely something that I always look into. Like leading lines, is always something that I go to. But I think I don't really work with a lot of shapes necessarily. I think all my stuff that I've ever done like locally is like mainly working with just walls, um, and patterns. I think for me it's just the symmetry issue is going to be something that I always work with. Um, for me, I think when it comes to, like I said before, where there's like a walkway and you want to take advantage of those leading lines, like that symmetry is something I tend to go for. But then I also try to not just work with that symmetry and have that person straight up in the center, but have them leaned on something on the side, so that you still kind of get that symmetry, but then you have that subject just kind of there complementing that symmetry. But I think for me, it's more about color. I'm not sure how my mind works when it comes to like lines, shapes, and patterns. And I'm trying to think of like all the work that I've done before. And I think when it comes to like, for me, it's more like color, lighting, and texture. So I think it's kind of like a question that's kind of like, what kind of brain do you have? Brain A or B? Like that personality kind of type. For me, it's like what textures, what colors do I see, and what lighting do I see? And I think those are always in the forefront of my mind. And maybe in the back of my mind, I have like leading lines and other things. So it's a good question, a very good question. I just My mind doesn't really necessarily work in that kind of order.
Let's see. Melvina is asking, "What's up, Melvina? How you doing?" And it says, "How do you feel about using gels that enhance your outdoor images?"
So this is something that I do want to get better at, and I will say for everybody here, this little story. The very first time that I tried to do this one technique when it comes to gels, and I think I did it wrong, but it's still like it kind of like left a bad taste in my mouth regarding gels. But I heard of this technique where you add like a blue gel onto your lighting, or yeah, blue gel, and then when you color correct the image, then you're basically going to change the background to like a more, I guess, more orange, because of the way that you color correct it. Basically a technique with gels that I did wrong. And then I brought the image to Lightroom, and I was like, why am I not getting this result that I want? And then so I think that kind of like tainted my kind of experience with gels, where I was like, what, forget gels, I'll just use post. I'll edit the background a different color this way. And I think that kind of like really kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But I have, throughout the years, I did use gels every now and then to kind of see what I could do. But I feel like when it comes to using gels, there are some photographers that do crazy, crazy work when it comes to gels. And it's something that I definitely want to get better at. I definitely want to get better at this, because you can honestly create some crazy images using gels. And for me, again, I think this is about more how my mind works. For me, whenever I approach any sort of, photo shoot and lighting in general, I always think of my mind as like I'm working with like a theater stage, and I consider my key light like that big spotlight, and my mind works like that. For
Right.
me, I think it's a more of a challenge for me mentally to kind of think of, well, what other lighting can I introduce? What other gels can I do? What can I do with that? But I always carry magma gels in my backpack, in my camera bag. Do I ever use them every time? No, but they're there in case I'm like, you know what, that wall is so plain. Let me add some color onto it. So I have it. I have that availability. I just need to make more use of using gels because I honestly strongly believe that they can really enhance an image.
Yeah, so next time you're trying that technique, don't wait till you get back home. Change the white balance in your camera. Change the white balance in the camera so you can see what it's going to look like on location, and then you'll be able to get to that result that you want. Typically, Kelvin, obviously, because you can dial it in more specifically, right? But yeah, just play with the different white balances on the camera in order to be able to see what that final result will be like.
See, we're all learning here. We're all learning.
Ben asks, who are some of your photography heroes that you draw inspiration from?
See, in the very, very beginning, this photographer named Joey L was very much and I think honestly, I think to this day, I still think he's on my top list right here, because he, back in when I was starting to learn a lot about photography and wanting to know more about lighting, 2011, I think it was him and like one or two maybe other photographers. That's it. And I'm very much internet savvy. Like I'll scour the internet for little tidbits here and there, here and there. And back then, like nobody was sharing behind the scenes. Nobody was sharing, light setups or anything. Nobody. And Joey L was very much one of the kind of the early adopters of showing his light setups and even videos too. And they might still be online somewhere. But I very much appreciated his ability to teach through visual learning, just behind the scenes stuff. And I think I had an appreciation of that. So over the course of the years, I kind of like tuned in with what he was doing, and he did some amazing work in, like, I don't know, I want to say India or Africa, just outside of the US.
Okay,
yeah, just some awesome stuff. And I very much vibed with the results that he was getting. And I was like, this guy's awesome. And he shares behind the scenes. He's not scared to share how he does his stuff and share the equipment that he used. And the biggest reason why he's on number one on my list still is because I met him once at a party in New York. And I was like, do I want to meet this guy? I'm always scared that, the person that you hold up here is going to be like a jerk. You never want to meet your heroes or something like that. And I met him. Awesome guy. He was really awesome. And I was telling him about some stuff that he did back in the day that probably nobody remembered. Specifically his, like, I think it was his Nikon video. He made like a music video, like a parody video. And I was like, do you remember that? And he's like, well, man, nobody remembers that. But then I was like, for anybody who doesn't know who the photographer is, just know that he's a crazy cool guy, crazy awesome work. And one of the biggest things people probably remember is that he did like the cover photo of the first Twilight movie. The one where like Edward Cullen and Bella are looking different directions and they're like right next to each other. I'm pretty positive he did that photo shoot. So that's probably the biggest thing that people remember. Oh yeah, the first Twilight movie, he did the poster for that.
Nice. So. Yeah, Joey L is dope. Like when I first started being interested in photography, a buddy of mine was the one who told me about him. So I saw like his work, all of the stuff in Africa that you're talking about. I saw like those videos and everything. But yeah, and he was like super young too when he was like super pop, and he was like 19 or something like that. This dude was traveling all over the world shooting like all kinds of like really big campaign stuff. So
yeah, dope. Crazy good talent, and he had that drive too.
Let's see. Christina is asking, how do you use your histogram? If so, do you slightly underexpose?
Yeah, I don't necessarily, like, if I needed to tell people like a certain format to kind of get certain results that are like my own, then I could definitely use the histogram. But for me, I'm very visual. Like, and the good thing about like mirrorless cameras now is that when you're changing your settings, you can see exactly how the exposure is going to change with it. But for histograms, I would say I don't use them, but I can use them. If I were to choose a certain kind of underexposure or like a kind of standard of what I do in my own work, I typically underexpose the scene. Maybe if I'm being really dramatic, a stop and a half. If I'm being just a little bit dramatic, maybe like a third of a stop. But I'm always underexposing that background because I feel like when you do that, you can make that subject pop a little bit more by having them, a little bit brighter than the background. So I don't use my histogram. But if I did need to kind of give you an answer that regarding the histogram, I would say my kind of standard is maybe like two thirds underexposed the background.
So I'll chime in on that one. I don't use my histogram, but I use my histogram. I use my histogram to check what my eye is seeing. So if I'm in a scene and I'm seeing something like, let's say you're looking at the back of your LCD screen and it looks super bright, right? Like it looks like it might be overexposed. I'll look at my histogram to be sure that it's not overexposed, right?
True.
That's how I use my histogram. I don't do everything judging off the histogram, but I'm situational. Like yesterday, I was shooting some stuff for this magazine, and as the day went by, we were right next to this window, and it was like stupid bright with all of these wedding dresses, right? And now I'm looking at the back of the screen, and it looks overexposed. But I look at my histogram, be sure that I'm not clipped, and I can pull down whatever it is that I need to pull down to get the result that I want. So
yeah, that's a very good question.
Yeah, if you don't know how to use your histogram, I suggest you do it. Shameless plug. If you go to my TikTok page, there's a video on there that breaks down the histogram and how I use it as well. Where are we?
Yeah, but for me, I use my Sony camera on a setting that makes the back of the image or the back of the screen very bright. It's called sunny weather, I believe it's called. But that actually gives me a false reading on the exposure. So, like you said before, that's when I kind of will check the histogram. I'm like, is it good? And more often than not, it's actually underexposed about like half a stop. So when I go to Lightroom, I change it half a stop brighter, and then it's perfect. But I always tell people I don't mind that underexposure because I feel like if anything, it's a little bit more protection of highlights. But if it's a case where you're like, if somebody was like, you need to nail this exposure down, one shot, that's all you get, and no editing, then I'm like, okay, let me change the brightness of my camera, and then I'll be good because I know that that brighter camera the brighter screen is giving me that false reading.
Got it. So Ruben's question is for you. He said, been watching your videos for a long time. For your evening and night portraits, do you use CTO gels to balance your light with the street lights? Good
for
question.
my night portraits, for my evening and night portraits. I don't use CTO gels, but for the last couple of maybe years, whenever I was using my Godox 8300 Pro, that actually has a LED on it that's bicolor, and I don't necessarily use gels, but that has a feature where you can change the color temperatures. So I have kind of made use of that in that aspect. But I think the only thing that I used gels over the past couple of years was a night shoot that I did, I think in 2022, I think 2022 or 2020. Yeah. Where it was a very unique gel that goes over the flash, and you could still use the softbox. And I think it was something like a light blue because I was going for like a moonlight kind of effect on the subject. It was a Catwoman shoot. So then I used the gel for that because I wanted a certain effect. But I actually don't try to ever kind of match the color temperature of the flash for the background, because I think when you match it, for example, if there's like a very orange light behind me or behind the subject, and you add a CTO on the flash, I feel like you kind of lessen that effect of what you're actually seeing. So like I want that kind of I don't kind of wary of saying the word realism, but I know for a fact that that light behind the person is very orangey, and I want it to show up in the image. So if I were to kind of use the CTO to correct that, it would make it into not orange.
Make a white light.
Yeah, it would make a white light, and I don't want that. I want it to actually look like how it is. So that's where I would avoid. and also laziness. So there's that aspect as well too. So then I'm like, you know what? So
Yeah, I'm the same way at weddings or whatever. Like I don't use color corrective gels in order to make the lights look white. Like I use my white light or and I'll use the ambient just the way that it is. And I haven't had any complaints at all. So
exactly.
let's see. Let's go to Rowan. I'll come back to your question, Alexis. How important is it to networking in the photography industry, and how do you approach it?
That's that again, a lot of good questions. So I'm just want to give props to everybody for all these questions because they're actually good, thoughtful questions. I think for networking, I think honestly that's important to me. I met so many great people over the years. From just for me, what it came down to when it came to networking for me is that I might find somebody's work great and then their personality not so great. So that kind of influenced how much networking I did going forward. But I think putting yourself out there is scary to begin with, but I think you have to do that in order to kind of get these different opportunities. Networking is super important to the fact or to the point where when I was starting to attend conferences in 2015, I went for the intent of networking. Like I wanted to shake people's hands and say, hi, my name is Francisco, I use your stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I also wanted to meet some people that I was learning from online. Like I was watching YouTube videos or reading articles from different photographers. And I think, some people might have a big ego over time, but I always want to, if I learn from somebody and they helped me out and I want them to know that because I always want them to have that kind of that knowledge that they're helping people out. The stuff that they're putting out there is actually doing its job. I always want to thank them personally. So I was like, hey, I read this thing and it really helped me out. I just wanted to say thank you for that. And sometimes depending on that network, that person, they might want to talk a little bit more. Sometimes they're busy and they're like, oh, thank you, and then they walk away. But I always want to make sure that at least I'm doing the effort and making sure that I'm doing a little bit of networking here and there. But when it comes to local like competition, there's a photographer that I'm working with right now named Omar. He's been doing a lot of different quinces and weddings and other portrait shoots, and he knows very much that I don't like to take on clients myself because of that, that the time slot that it takes away from my family. But he's like, hey, if you're interested, I'm doing this day. If you want a second shoot or something like that, and he gives me these opportunities, and of course I earn a little bit. I have work that I can show people, how I got from point A to B. And I just take advantage of that networking opportunities locally and abroad, when I go to conferences, because again, you put yourself out there and you gain opportunities by putting yourself out there. Obviously, you don't want to be a jerk and everything, hey, my work is better than yours. Nobody's going to be, receptive to that. I always try to be very genuine with people. And I think networking can definitely go a long way to the point where I would say that I eventually became ambassadors for different companies out there because of my networking. And
Right.
I got an opportunity recently in the past couple of days from somebody that I met at a conference in person, and they had said before, and this is kind of common, I think, at least from my opinion, that some people they want to meet you in person to gauge how you are as a person in person, rather than just knowing you online and talking to you online before they kind of give you that extra opportunity from this company or that company, because meeting people in person is it's very different than just knowing somebody online. It really is.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I don't think people put enough stock in networking, right? I mean, there's a famous saying like your network is your net worth, right? People ask me all the time, like, oh, how do you get all these ambassadorships? Do you hit the companies up? Nope. Meet people at conferences. I just I just do my job, right? And I meet people at conferences and things end up, happening the way that they're supposed to fall, right? But so many people like, oh, I don't want to go to conferences, or I don't want to spend that money, or I spent $1,500 to go to a conference like 2 years ago. And when I got there, the person that put on the conference was like, what are you doing here? Like, oh, I came just to like hang out. She was like, you paid? It was like, yeah, I paid. It's like, you didn't have to pay. I'm like, why would I not have to pay? Like, people, I don't stand on this. Oh, I'm Andre Brown. Let me get free shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't. Like, if you're interested in me coming or whatever, you'll let me know. But if it's something that, like, I feel like I need to pay for, I'll pay for. I paid the $1,500 to go to this conference, and this was for a ticket, right? Hotel was another $1,500 for the days that we were there. My flight over there to the West Coast, right? That conference, now that particular conference, I obtained one of the strongest relationships that I have in terms
Yeah.
of a company. And I went to just hang out. Just literally to go hang out, right? Like, sometimes, like, you need to make those investments in yourself. Like, you get so many people that are just like, oh, give me free stuff. I literally had a photographer made me mad. It was like, oh, can you introduce me to XYZ for XYZ company? I'm like, oh yeah, why, what's up? Oh man, I want to be an ambassador so I can get free shit. I'm like, man, like, I'm not making that introduction because I
Yeah.
I I also don't want you then to be coming on strong or whatever. Like, give me free stuff, right? And then the person that
Andre
I
said you're gonna give me free stuff.
introduced, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, nah, not at all. Most of the companies that I'm an ambassador for, I was using that gear prior. And then some companies, I transitioned over to using their stuff, so they replace what I had from other companies or whatever, right? But that I don't do any ambassadorships based off of, let me get free gear, free licensing, all of that, because the requirements of what they want from you are generally a lot more than what it costs for
Yep.
whatever this free gear is that you're trying to get from them. So, you
Yeah.
know, $400 product subscription per year, and then they want you to do like 12 reels a month, and what, like, that's not worth it, just so you can say, oh, well, yeah, I got the software for free, but you did slave labor in order to,
Yeah.
like,
There's always strings. There's always
right,
strings. Yeah.
1,000%. So network with people, and like, I meet people all the time, and I'm like, oh, I got a good connect for you or whatever, and I'll pair people together. It's just all about just being a good person, people to see who you really are. And people will inherently just help you.
Yeah. That
Um,
mindset of just free shit. That's you're already starting off wrong there. You
yeah,
got yeah. Try to keep it mutual beneficial, like both sides.
right. Let me see. Let me go to Amy, then I'll come back to your question, Alexis. What is your opinion on motion blur? I do it sometimes during the after parties at quinceas and weddings, depending on the vibe. What is your usual go to settings?
For me, I think I made a post not too long ago about how there's this trend when it comes to the younger generations, like I don't know, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, maybe, but where they just like blurring the photo is blurred, like you miss focus, and that's popular right now. I'm not. I know you're not mentioning that, but I'm already like reminded of that. So when I was limited on gear early on, I had to use a slower shutter speed because my ISO was just too grainy past ISO 800. So I had to, use a slower shutter speed because I was forced to. So for me, I think it's probably like a very old man kind of mindset where I'm like, well, nowadays I can go to ISO 6400 and be at 200ths of a second and have a good sharp image, and I'm gonna do that. So I'm old up here sometimes. So for me, motion blur, I try to avoid it. Like I'm always scared of making a photo that's not in focus or anything like that. So I always try to keep my shutter speed a little bit high. At my events, I know, like, it's controversial, but I keep my ISO pretty high, like up to 1,000 to 1,000, to 6,400, because I want a good amount of ambient light there. The flash doesn't need to work as hard, and I keep my shutter speed like I think 200 to 250. I don't keep it less than 200. I have shaky hands. Now, not a lot of people realize this, but I have shaky hands. So even though there's like in camera image stabilization, I don't want it to work harder than it needs to be. So that shutter is staying at 200, 250, and I'm doing my best to avoid motion blur. But there are some things that people have done before where what's it called, with flash, where you use a very slow shutter speed, and then you like turn the camera real quick after you take the picture, and it has a cool effect. Um, I don't do that. I could if I needed to, but I don't do that. So motion blur is not something that you really see in my stuff in events.
So let me go back to Alexis's question. She's saying that Bokeh is going to be her first photography conference. We thank you for being in attendance. We appreciate that. How do you approach these types of events? Now, if anybody is in this chat that knows me at conferences, I approach it a lot different than a lot of other people. Now, Francisco, I met you, I think we met face to face at WPPI,
I think so,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how many of the events that you go to, but let's get your take on it.
For me, I keep it like an open mind, honestly. Like you're there, you're paying money, you want to absorb and absorb and absorb. So, you could go take a class and absorb the knowledge there. You could for one, just getting out of your own comfort. Like some people I've talked to in the past where they're like, I don't know anybody who does photography at all, and I don't reach out to people. So like they literally talk to photography to themselves, maybe a spouse. But when they go to conferences, you literally have that flexibility of being able to kind of connect with other people who share your interest. So I think that was one of the things that, being a little introverted, early on. I was very introverted up until like 2015, like 14, until I graduated. I was still very introverted. Didn't want to talk to people that I didn't know. And I think when it comes to attending more and more photography conferences, you just have, again, everybody's there to share this common interest of photography. And you can be like, oh, what lens is that? Oh, it's this lens. Or what light is that? Why do you use that light? And and then everybody's just open to talking. Like I think just keeping an open mindset, go get out of your shell, if you have a shell, get out of it and talk to people. And again, it's not necessarily the goal of networking, but you are networking when you're just talking to people. Like, oh, what's your Instagram? I'll follow you on Instagram. I think just being open minded when it comes to anything, when it comes to learning, meeting people, talking shop about gear, learning lighting techniques. I think conferences are the best way to go about doing that, to learning more. So that's why I always recommend people going to actual conferences, because you have those opportunities. You might go back home, and then again, you're back in the spot where you don't really know people. But then when you go to these conferences, you network and you get to know people, and now you have friends that you can communicate with. And hey, how is that lens that you were going to order, or that you ordered at the conference? How's it working out for you? Oh, it kind of sucks, or it's good. You just have the opportunity with conferences. And I think that is definitely something that you can't replace with just learning online. Like for me, I did my best to learn online as much as possible when it comes to photography and lighting. And then when I went out into the field and did it, I was like, what the heck am I doing wrong? It's very similar in that aspect, because you might have, just yourself to work with when it comes to learning photography and things. But conferences kind of give you that extra space to learn and work with and connect people. So I think it's perfect for that. Just keep an open mind.
For me, when I'm at conferences, I handle conferences like I handle my everyday life. Like I truly believe in I rock with everybody until you do something that makes me just not rock with you no more, right? I remember the first conference I went to, Shutterfest 2015. So it's like a couple of months after I started as a photographer, right? I was there. I'd never been to the conference. And if you know, Shutterfest is a different conference than all of the other ones anyway, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I'm there, I brought gear or whatever, but traveling with light stands, you're like, oh, how do you do that? Right? Ended up running into this guy, never forget him. Haven't seen him since Shutterfest 2015, Gary Young out of Boston. I was like, man, I really want to shoot some stuff. I don't have no light stand though. Dude reached down in his bag, gave me a light stand, give it back to me the last day. Right?
There you go.
It's like who does that? Because we're not trusting anybody here, right? Same year, I met Mark. I just thought about him the other day when I was driving through Nashville. Mark Billingsley. Met him at the conference. I was like, bro, I really like your work. If you ever need an assistant or something like that, let me know. He said, after the show, hit me up, we'll talk about it. Now, I am very much so a person that's like, I am show and prove. I'm gonna hit you up. He hit me up. I mean, I hit him up. He replied back. He said, all right, cool. You can give me, I can have you come on this date or this date. I picked the first available date because again, I'm eager. I want to learn. This dude had me come out to Nashville, stayed at his crib. This dude cooked like some of the most bomb barbecue I ever had. We did the wedding the next day in Bowling Green, Kentucky, which I was just there this week shooting a wedding. And I learned so much stuff from him. It's funniest story. We don't have time to get into it, but this dude was the photographer and the DJ for the wedding. Don't ask me how, but the photos were fantastic or whatever, right? But when you go into it with that spirit of like how you can serve others and and like everything else will come back to you or whatever, right? When you're a self-serving person, it's only going to get you so far. So I'm typically at the conferences, I'm working the room, I'm talking to everybody. If we engage in a good conversation, we have a good exchange. When I see you at the bar later, I got you. I take care of my people. Hey, I'm gonna be at the bar later. Come through. There's a lot of people that I know just from conferences or whatever, just being around. Like we've been cool for some time. That conference I spent $1,500 to go to. I met somebody there from a company. I know his drink order. So now when we're at conferences or whatever, boom, there you go. Like I'm fostering those relationships or whatever. But we're friends, right? But I'm fostering healthy relationships. I do my best to go to every single conference, every single event, because you never know who it is that you're gonna meet and how those people can be an impact, to your career as a photographer. Now, I've seen some more questions pop up in the live side. I'm going to answer the ones that are starred here and then get into the giveaway because you got to go. I got to go. These people got to go, right? So let's just try to burn through these pretty quickly. Just keep the answers a little bit shorter. Derek is asking, what are the top 5 platforms you use to get your work seen by the public?
Oof, that's crazy. Is it for both of us or for?
That's you. Yeah, that's you, buddy. Because you're
See,
118,000 subscribers. Like I'm not that guy.
so the 5, that's a good number if you really want to just aim
That's a
high.
lot.
But
5 is a
yeah,
lot. Just
I would say maybe I know a lot. There's a lot of people that necessarily don't mess with Facebook anymore, but I think Facebook's still good for Facebook groups. That's how there was several groups where I posted a lot in, and people liked my work, and then they became like fans that way. So I would say Facebook's good for that, specifically Facebook photography groups. I think Instagram is still there's a lot of people still are like Instagram's dead. Instagram's it's on its last legs or whatever. I don't agree with that. I think it's still something that you can gain a following from if you just you gotta play the game. You gotta play the algorithm. Reels right now are popping off, and it's a good way to kind of get your work seen. So I'd say Instagram Reels, Facebook photo groups, and then TikTok. I would say is pretty good, but you got to play that game. Do all the trends and stuff. Sometimes you got to feel out how comfortable you are doing certain things like trends, or stay true to your own work, but try to keep you want to be engaging in certain ways that do better with the algorithm. So I would say TikTok's still a good one for that. And then outside of those 3, I think maybe if anything, maybe Flickr, and maybe 500px. These are those last 2 are like iffy. The first three are like the main ones, I would say. So I would stick to those first three. Also, there's Instagram Threads, which is kind of like more about like actually posting stuff without worrying about the algorithm. So I would say, I take off 500 pics. It's Facebook photo groups, Instagram Reels, TikTok, and then I would say Flickr and Instagram Threads. I would say those ones. Yeah, but
Got
those
it.
for three.
So Jay Banks and Carolina's questions kind of cross. So I'm gonna go there. So Carolina's asking, how do you get into Keatsies? And then Jay Banks is asking, what are some pointers for someone who wants to shoot them but doesn't speak Spanish?
I don't speak Spanish myself, guys. I, I,
Burn,
yeah.
burn.
So
You're on the
yeah,
border, bro. You live
yeah.
on the border.
Hey, my excuse is always that, and it's not a good excuse. I was born and raised in Michigan half my life, and I didn't speak Spanish, but my brothers and my sisters do speak Spanish. My mind is just stubborn. It never wanted to learn. So if I was dropped in the middle of Mexico, I could get by. I could get by. People might make fun of me, but I can get by. So it's like the knowledge is there, but not fully there. So I mean, I guess I'm good to answer that question because I don't really speak Spanish myself. But I would say if you want to get into quinces, that what's really helpful always when it comes to at least in getting business in any sense is shooting friends of family, or shooting family, shooting friends of family, and then from there kind of build a kind of this sense that, oh, that's the photographer of the family. Oh, that photographer is my friend, my family photographer. Or you always want to just kind of get that mindset that you are the photographer, the go-to photographer. And then when you're doing work with your family and your friends from the family, that is developing a portfolio. So then you can kind of just put yourself out there on Facebook ads, Instagram ads, localize those ads for your area, and then you can get more leads that way, and potential clients will hit you up. You definitely want to make a website, of course, so you have somewhere to contact. But yeah, you always want to just shoot family, friends of family, family and friends, and that way you can build a portfolio to kind of get that sense that you know what you're doing, because people want to see some work that you've taken. And for me, when I did quince stuff, I did my first quince that I think I did was my family member that is from my cousin from Michigan. So it's where I grew up, so it wasn't too complicated. I could, chill at her house and visit family members in that area. But that was the first quince that I did, and from then, when somebody potential client hit me up and said, do you have any quince experience? Can I see some photos that you've done at a quince? That was my opportunity to kind of show them that I knew what I was doing. Oh, look, here's the quince shoot that I did. I printed it by 16 by 20 or 20 by 30. And that's, you gotta know at least a little bit about what you're doing. And I would say maybe if you have the opportunity to kind of shadow or, work with some photographers that do quinces, and that will kind of be like your foot in the door to doing quinces. And then you can continue to do quinces. When it comes to speaking Spanish, that's a tricky one because I don't speak Spanish. And I think maybe second shooting would be good to kind of get your foot in the door. And then that way you can, because for just like weddings, you have the bridesmaids that, eventually might get married. Like quinces is, I think quinces, if I were to do only one thing, it'd be either sports portraits for high schoolers or quinces, because quinces are rich with like, this quince girl has so many friends that are girls, and they all are going to have quinces soon. So then, that can kind of lead into, more work. So I would say that's something that's going to be, if you work with a quince and she only speaks English, or, maybe not Spanish, but she has a friend that only speaks English or something like that, then you can, you get your foot in the door that way.
Cool, Larry. Last question before we do our giveaway. It's from Christina. She's asking, what do you look for as replacements when you don't have your modifiers available?
I showed her one thing in Vegas. I know what she's saying. I used like a bag as a modifier because I wanted to soften the light a little bit. It did have a little bit of color, color cast on the subject, but I didn't want that direct harsh light, so I used the bag. I think it was the bag that they had at WPPI. But one thing that I really have been wanting to do a lot lately, I don't think I've ever done it yet, is that if I was really in a position where I wanted soft lighting, but I didn't have any softbox with me, is that I think Pi Jerza of SLR Lounge did this before, but I wanted to do it myself. But he brought somebody with a white shirt to a photo shoot on a beach in like California, and he basically bounced the flash off of that shirt. And yeah, you can create a softbox that way without bringing a softbox. So I think that's something that you could do if you don't have a modifier. Maybe bounce a neutral color off of somebody's shirt, or if you have, and I think Jerry Gionis did this before. He taught this at a workshop, I think, where he basically, I think the subject was like kind of like a good like 10 feet away, 15 feet away from a wall, but it was at nighttime, so he really just needed to boost his ISO or the power of the flash. But he basically just aimed it at the wall. It was a very kind of a gray kind of wall, light kind of gray, and then he shot it at the wall, and then boom, it created a softbox, and it was nice soft light on the subject. So bouncing the light is a good way to do that. It's just kind of maybe a little difficult to kind of find things to bounce off of. But I do want to do a photo shoot like that one, eventually, where I'm like, no softbox, let me find things to bounce off of and try to do that.
At weddings historically I use pillows. I don't take
What?
I don't take a reflector. I hate reflectors. I don't take reflectors with me or whatever, but I'll use a pillow as like a V flat at a wedding. Get a bridesmaid, get somebody, hey, hold this pillow like that to get that natural bounce off of like the window light back in to the subject. I did that at a wedding. The videographer that was shooting with me, like her mind was blown. She was like, "What the hell did I just see?" But yeah. All right, guys. So that wraps it for our questions. We're gonna get rolling. So I'm gonna share my screen. And again, I've chose the names based on all of the people that asked questions throughout this entire thing. And with that, I compiled a list and put them into our name selector machine. So let's select our window. Now we're gonna do the giveaway.
Ooh.
If you're already an attendee of the Bokeh Photo Summit, you can gift that ticket to somebody else. We'll gift this ticket to somebody else. But if you have not registered for the summit, you will win a free basic ticket to the conference. Now, if you don't win, right, which obviously many of you won't, right, use code Francisco to sign up to get $100 off. Now, let's get it going. Let's get it going. Let's see who it is. And you must be on this webinar. So we're gonna go from there. Carolina, is she still on?
Let's see if she's still on.
Is she still on?
And I know some people have commented that they haven't gone to conferences or they don't really have much people to talk to locally. And
Carolina,
again, that's a great reason.
Carolina, you got 2 seconds.
3.
4, 3, 2, 1. We are moving on because you didn't chime in. We're moving the name.
She's in the bathroom.
Yeah, she's gonna be salty because I know who she is too.
I think I know her too. What is it? Oh, that was so close.
So close. Alex said, "Congratulations to Carolina," but it looks like you're congratulating yourself. So, Alex, shoot me a DM, and I will let you know how to go in and register for the event. Thanks again for everyone who came out and joined us today. Again, if you somebody must have told her to come back. Oh, come back on because yeah, for sure. But yeah, if you aren't already part of the conference, if you haven't gotten a ticket, use code Francisco for $100 off of your registration. And I hope to see you all in August. Come out, see me. Come out, see Francisco. And hopefully we'll see you in August. Thanks again, man, for chiming in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and everybody, just again, if you want to like follow both of us, one of us on Instagram, we both have awesome work. You can learn a lot, and he has a lot more stuff than me apparently on TikTok and all other stuff and like theories. So yeah, follow us and learn from us.
Yeah, actually, I'll share. Let me share your what you call it right quick, because I actually had it pulled up. So I have your Instagram pulled up for those who, not your Instagram, but your YouTube. So we'll pull up your YouTube here. 118,000 followers
That's
on
me.
YouTube. Like that is just insane, right? So yeah, definitely go check him out. He has a video there about the summit and his class at the summit. So go in and check that out. And then obviously go follow him over on um,
All the
TikTok.
socials.
Yeah, TikTok and Instagram. I have your Instagram up here. Let's see if I can.
Yeah, it's
Does it?
FJH photo anywhere. So if you type that, like you're good. Whatever's your preferred one, FJH photo, boom, it's there.
All right, there he goes. All his work there, showing some behind the scenes, some awesome editing, stuff like that. So yeah, definitely go and go check him out.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, my friend. Thank you all for stopping in, and I appreciate you all for coming
Yeah.
by.
It
And
was fun. Lots of good questions.
yeah, right, right. And then again, I hope to see you all in August. Later,
Yep.
guys.
Goodbye, everybody.